everybody, and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm your host, Stan Illman. Let's take a look at what's on tap for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Daily Racing Form handicappers Nicole Russo, Mike Beer, and I will take a look at three major turf races across North America on Saturday. Two at Woodbine, the Patterson Canadian International and the E.P. Taylor Stakes, and the Grade 1 Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup at 1 1/8 for 3-year-old fillies at Keeneland. The Timeform U.S. boys, Craig Milkowski, David Aragona, they've got their pace projector and spotlight segments respectively, plus horses to watch, best bets, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our Horse Watch segment. Our colleague Nicole Russo has a fascinating horse to watch. Keep an eye on this replay.
Well, the Breeders' Cup is just 3 weeks away, and starting to look ahead to some of the horses to watch that we'll see at Santa Anita. I definitely want to circle Soldier's Call as one to keep your eye on in the turf sprint. I think you're going to get a great price on him because the only prior time he shipped to the U.S., he was 6th as the favorite in last year's juvenile turf sprint. And he won't be coming into this Breeders' Cup off a flashy effort, having gone unplaced last time Group 1 on the undercard. But those races were run on softer ground. I think this horse is crying out for truly firm going. And knowing that, trainer Archie Watson has been very keen all year to take him to Santa Anita. I'm excited to see what he can do over a course that I think will be to his liking. He's already proven his class time and again. You're going to watch now his fine third in the Group 1 King's Stand at Royal Ascot, behind Blue Point, who has since been retired, and Batash, who was considered the top sprinter in Europe after Blue Point bowed out. Soldier's Call, a very good third behind the two of them, ran a good second behind Batash in a Group 1 later in the summer. He won't be facing competition that I think is as stiff as those two here. And by the way, this is a horse who was third by a head in a Group 1 race last year against older horses while he was still a juvenile. He's a diminutive horse, but though he be little, he is fierce. I'm very much looking forward to seeing Soldier's Call return to the Breeders' Cup.
Nicole's Horse Watch with a little bit of an international flair. Mike, you like this horse that you made a horse watch this week in the Woodford last Saturday. You were not happy with the trip.
Yeah, I just want to give myself a little more grief and throw the replay up again. This is Extravagant Kid last Saturday in the Woodford at Keeneland, sprinting on the turf. Thought this was the trip he was going to get, Dan. There was some speed in the race. It seemed like he would sit in behind it. He did. And unfortunately for Jose Ortiz, he just can't find anywhere to run in this race. Shuffles out of position here, loses all chance. Just a really tough go for this horse in this race. He'd been in great form leading into this, Dan. He didn't get much of a trouble comment for this race either. I think the chart just says steadied and then flattened out late. So if you just look at the chart, you might not think this horse had a tough trip, but to me, he had no chance in there.
My horse does not have international flair nor graded stakes credentials. This one's a maiden claimer that you're going to see coming up at either Penn National or Laurel, but Seneva, this is the second bad trip for Seneva, and the jock's just completely passive. We see him at the back of the pack right now. He just seems unwilling to go in between horses right now. The hole is finally going to open up, I guess, and now he's going to shoot on through. And watch Seneva finish this race off. Seneva has speed, and they've taken him back in his last two races, and he's got buried behind horses. But he is rallying very powerfully at the end of this race. Seneva has a maiden claiming race in him. Maybe he needs a rider switch, but this is a horse to follow at Penn National or Laurel. Let's get to some handicapping. The Grade 1 Patterson Canadian International is your DRF Bet Saturday race of the day. Let's take a look at the field for Saturday's DRF Bets Race of the Day. It's the Grade 1 Patterson Canadian International. $800,000 is the purse. We're going 1.5 miles, one full circuit around the E.P. Taylor turf course. It's carded as race number 9 at Woodbine. And for expanded stakes previews of all the major races this weekend, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike Beer, even money on the morning line. The number 1 Zayad certainly brings legitimate international credentials to this race. Group 1 place 2 starts back in France. then scored very nicely last time out in a Group 2 at Deauville. Showed good speed, is striking the front right now.
Yeah, based on his Group 1 placing two-back, he didn't really have to improve to beat this field, but he just showed up and did what he had to do. Got a great trip, takes it over, holds on to the wire here, Dan. I thought he ran really well. He's in clearly the best form of his life right now, and he's got really good tactical speed. That gives him an advantage in this race.
I think you just said a mouthful, because there is a very questionable pace situation in the Canadian International. Not a lot of speed on display. He got right up close in that race that we just saw, sitting second before tipping to the outside. He might make the running or sit just off the pace, and he's going to be very, very tough. From Germany comes Alunak, coming off of a win in a group race. Let's take a look at that race right now. And the course at Baden-Baden resembles that of Woodbine. Long left-handed straightaway, about 2.5 furlongs long. He's on the outside in the pink silks, and he's going to wear this horse down just in the shadow of the wire. Always tough to analyze German form. They're not of the par of French, Irish, or British racing, but this was a useful performance for a horse that needs to prove he can stretch out to 12. This at 1.25 miles.
Right. He's game in this race to get it done. You see him there in his wrong lead. He just got up at the end of that race. He had lost his prior 6 starts. Not that he had run poorly in those races, but he wasn't able to get it done. That's his first win of the year. We'll see if he can do better, because he's got to do better in this field.
Nicole Russo likes another horse shipping in from Europe in this race. Let's get to her analysis.
Thanks, Dan. This is a small field for the Canadian International, but I think it's well matched, and it definitely lives up to the race's international billing. The 6 entries are all coming in good form, all having finished first or second in stakes action most recently in 5 different countries. Faced with this field, I'm going with the Occam's razor method of handicapping here and taking the defending winner, Desert Encounter. The big thing looking at repeat attempts like this, I think, is evaluating if the horse is still in that form. And he seems to be coming to Woodbine just as good, if not better, than he did in 2018. He's won 3 consecutive group stakes races in Great Britain coming in, most recently winning the Group 3 Dubai Duty Free Legacy Cup, which he was 3rd in last year prior to his Canadian International win. He bested fellow Woodbine entrant Pivioni by a length there, so I think if you like one, you have to like the other at least a little bit. But if you're playing the multi-race wagers at Woodbine, I think this race, with its short field and standout defending winner, is a good place to single or go narrow so that you have the opportunity to spread in other races.
Yeah, I'm glad Nicole showed that replay of his win in this race last year, because I think that's an important thing to note. I think it's also important to note that this horse has been, since that race, in even better form this year. He's come back with 3 straight really top performances back in Great Britain. Let's look at his most recent win. I wanted to show one of his recent races. He's sitting in behind the leaders here, just cruising along under Jamie Spencer. This horse, you're going to see him momentarily switch to the outside and just come and get these horses. I was really taken with this win, Dan. This horse is just in great form right now. He needs a trip in this race, but if he gets one, I think he's going to be tough right back.
I'm with you. I like Desert Encounter. I'm a little concerned that he didn't break very well in this race. He does not have the tactical speed of Zayad, and in last year's Canadian International, he got a hot pace to rally into. But as you see him finishing here, he is really being very comfortably ridden, and now, when asked for run the last 150 yards, he extends and is getting away from this field. Desert Encounter obviously likes the Woodbine turf course. It's all about him staying within range when Zayad gets the jump on him, turning into the stretch. But Desert Encounter offers a little bit more value on the morning line. I'll make it unanimous. I'll agree with Nicole and Mike and go with Desert Encounter. Craig Milkowski's Timeform US Pace Projector segment's coming up. He's looking at a turf sprint at Woodbine on Saturday, then the Arctic Stakes. Let's go to Craig.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski at Timeform US for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. In my Pace Projector segment this week, I'm going to take a look at the Grade 2 Nearctic Stakes being run as a 7th race on Woodbine on a stakes-laden card they have here. It's 6 furlongs on the turf, and as you can see in the upper right-hand corner in our condensed version of the Pace Projector, we expect the pace to be fast. That's what that red indicates. We'll see that a little closer here in a second. You can look down the preview page, see the running style profiles of some of the horses that lead to that decision. We have several speeds, leaders, trackers in here. There's also a horse who's going to be pretty significant for me with an NA. That's a horse shipping over from overseas for the first time. So we don't have any pace ratings for that horse, so no early or late. And you can also see on the far right-hand side that the horse is getting Lasix for the first time. We do have a race rating of 113 here. I do like to use that as kind of a par. I expect the winner to be able to run that, particularly for older horses where we have a pretty good baseline. So horses that can't reach that 113 are horses I'm probably not going to be interested in. Closer look at the pace projector. Don't need to spend a lot of time on this. You can once again see that 7-horse Woody Creek is a horse who we don't have data, so you don't see a number. You can clearly see that fast pace. Not too much else to see here that you can't see in that condensed version. Let's take a closer look at some of the speed horses we have here. We'll start with number 9, Yorkton. Yorkton's a horse who won his last race on the synthetic surface at Woodbine, going wire to wire. He set a fast pace in the Grade 1 Highlander on turf last time over the same course before yielding, getting beat 4 lengths back in 6th. And the time before that in the Connaught Cup, he was right up on the pace before fading out and didn't really do much. Wasn't as much of a factor that day. So I do expect him to be a pace factor. He's a horse who his figures are about as good on turf as they are on synthetic, but I think he's going to be up against it with all the speed in here. Some of that speed here belongs to the 3-horse. Here's a horse who's shown a lot of speed. This is one I don't really expect to be a contender based on the speed figures, but could certainly add to that pace. And another one is number 8, Richie's in the House. This is a horse who is almost always right up near the front, can go quick if he needs to. But again, don't really consider him a contender. But he is a horse that I think is going to contribute to that fast pace that I'm hoping is going to set it up for a closer. And that closer I've landed on is number 7, Woody Creek, the 3-year-old filly who's shipping over from England. She's been in really good form. She's improving. You can't get a lot of information on her on the PPs. As I've noted, we don't really have any figures for her other than the time form ratings, which you can see she was kind of improving. She ran a 114.2 back before dropping to a 98. But there is kind of an explanation for that. What I like to do with these overseas shippers is go and actually read the detailed time form comments, and they can be quite helpful. It's always good to watch replays, but if you don't have time or you can't find them, they will definitely come in handy, and particularly for this horse they did. I was able to find a few things out about this horse. One, that the last race was just a nightmare from a trip perspective. I've highlighted a few of the notes in here, as you can see. 2 races back, I was able to discover without replays that this is a horse that likes to come from the back. She usually drops back to the rear, and that's actually what we're looking for here. It plays well on this course. It's going to play well in this race according to our pace projector. So I really like what I'm seeing from this horse. She's a horse that the time form they really pointed out 3 back that she's an improving filly. She was unlucky to win the last time out. So she's the one I've landed on here. I'm going to group her up with some other closers. I'll just show a quick view of the preview page. You can see the 3 horses that have the top time form US late pace ratings in here. That's the 1 Admiralty Pier, the 2 Look in the Strike, and number 6, the Morning Line favorite Blind Ambition. So again, my top pick here is going to be the 7 Woody Creek. I'm going to play her in an exacta key box with the other top closers, the 1, the 2, and the 6. That does it for me for this week for Timeform US and for Out of the Gate, and I'll see you again next time.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, Timeform US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
So you think horse racing is all about fancy hats and mint juleps?
But horse racing is a big business in the Commonwealth, from the breeding shed to the racetrack.
It's all part of a multi-billion-dollar industry.
So I bet you're wondering, where do I start?
We all have the same answer.
U of L,
U of L.
the University of Louisville.
We're all graduates of the Equine Industry Program.
So what are you waiting for?
The UFL Equine Industry Program has been developing leaders for over 32 years. Apply today.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for the co-feature at Woodbine on Saturday, the Grade 1 $600,000 E.P. Taylor Stakes. We're going 1.25 miles for fillies and mares, carded as race number 8. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Nicole Russo likes a horse that's 10-1 on the morning line in the E.P. Taylor. Not sure she's going to get that price, but she'll get a good one.
Thanks, Dan. The E.P. Taylor goes the 1.25 mile classic distance on what can be a quirky course at Woodbine. So I began my handicapping by looking for entrants who have had success both on this course and at this distance. I centered in on 2 mares who have been knocking heads this year in Holy Helena and Starship Jubilee. Let's first take a look at Holy Helena, as she won the Grade 2 Dance Smartly at this 1.25 miles at Woodbine over Starship Jubilee back in June. Now, she wants to run long all day. Of course, she won the Queen's Plate on Woodbine's main track in 2017. But the Achilles heel for her could be a wet turf course on Saturday. She's faltered in her 2 starts this year on softer ground, although you could argue that she needed the race last time out in the Canadian when she was a game 4th in her first outing in over 2 months. We will take a look now at the Canadian, which was won by Starship Jubilee. She, on the other hand, would relish some cut in the ground on Saturday, as you saw in this race. This 6-year-old mare is in career form, hasn't missed the board this year. I think Holy Helena is the better horse. I think Starship Jubilee might enjoy the conditions that she'll see on Saturday more. Plenty of European standouts in this race, but I think many of them might be looking for firmer ground. I'm going to box Holy Helena and Starship Jubilee and see where the chips fall on Saturday in the E.P. Taylor.
Nicole's going to go with the Queen's Plate winner from a couple of years ago, Holy Helena, who's certainly capable on the turf. Mike, you're going with a horse shipping in from France, the number 2, Red Tea, and her most recent race was very important because it showed that she could step at this distance.
Yeah, it was very important. You're right, then. It also happens to be in a major Group 1 race in France. We can look at the replay of that run right now. This filly, this mare, actually, she's a 6-year-old mare, had never really been this kind of horse throughout her career. And I don't know what the difference has been this year, Dan, though, but since Joseph O'Brien's taken over, she has raised her game to a totally different level this year. She is in the form of her life, a big Group 2 win prior to this. You see her in the red there. She's going to finish a very good 3rd in this Group 1 race. She's never been better than she is right now, Dan, and I think they're shipping over for this race at the right time.
It's fairly remarkable how well she's turned her form around, and that, as you say, was a legitimate Group 1. The 7th place finisher came back to run 2nd in the prestigious Group 1 Prix Vermeil. Red Tea, arguably the horse to beat in the E.P. Taylor, arguably the horse to catch is my top selection in this race. That is Starship Jubilee, who's coming off a big gate-to-wire performance in her most recent start at Woodbine. We'll show that race right now. Now, she got away with a very easy early pace here. She was pressured by 30-1 shot Dixie Moon. They pushed the button at just the right time on the turn to open up an insurmountable lead, and Starship Jubilee's just going to do the rest. I like the way she finishes this off. Her early speed is a great asset. Yes, she's going to have some talented European horses chasing her this time around, but I believe that she's going to get a similar trip as last time. I think Starship Jubilee is going to go to the lead, back down the fractions, and try to sprint on home. She'll be my top selection in the E.P. Taylor Stakes. We'll move to Keeneland for Grade 1 stakes action for the 3-year-old fillies in the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup. Here's the field for the Grade 1 Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup, carded as race number 9 at Keeneland on Saturday. $500,000 is the purse. These 3-year-old fillies going to step 9 furlongs on the turf. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long, please visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Chad Brown, very well represented. He has 3 3-year-old fillies entered in the QE2, and Nicole Russo likes one of them.
Thanks, Dan. Well, after a month-long drought in the Lexington area, the rain arrived in Kentucky just in time for Keeneland. It's supposed to be cloudy Friday and Saturday with rain on Saturday. So in handicapping the QE2, I was looking for fillies who have succeeded when faced with softer ground. Castle Lady was a Group 1 winner on soft ground at Longchamp earlier this year, and Queen Elizabeth's own Magnetic Charm was a good second on yielding ground at Woodbine in her North American debut. However, European horses typically ship over here looking for firmer ground, so I'm not sure the rain on Saturday would be the preference for either of them. The Grade 2 Appalachian Stakes at Keeneland's spring meet was run on ground rated soft, and we'll take a look at that race here as Regal Glory and Princessa Carolina finished second and third respectively. I don't mind either of them in this spot, and in particular, I'm going to key my handicapping around Regal Glory, who you might get good value on since I think she might be overlooked in favor of her Chad Brown trained stablemates. Following the Appalachian, Regal Glory went on and won the Penn Oaks on yielding ground, won the Grade 3 Lake George on firm turf, and then finished in a dead heat for the win in the Grade 2 Lake Placid on ground rated good at Saratoga, with the consistent Varenka, who is also back here in that dead heat with her. Varenka ran very well on some soft courses last year and earlier this year. I wouldn't leave her out either. But again, I'm going to key around Regal Glory in Saturday's Keeneland feature, QE2.
Mike Buren taking a look at the Timeform US pace projector and the expanded stakes preview on video.drf.com and the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. We noticed there was not a lot of pace in this race, yet this did not dissuade you from picking a horse that we both crushed on during the Saratoga meet.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Varenka, because you're right. The race may not set up that well for her. But you know what, Dan? Her last race didn't set up that well for her either in the Lake Placid at Saratoga, but it didn't really matter at the end. We're going to show the replay of it right now. She sat back off this pace, and they did not go fast in front of her. You're going to see Castellano switch her to the outside. She comes with a really fast finish in this race. I don't know, Dan. I was really taken with this performance. I've actually been taken with all of her races this year. I think she's getting better with every start. I realized that she's going to need some kind of a trip in this race, but I think she's as good as any mare in this race.
I agree with you that her natural talent puts her on a par with any of the fillies in this race, but I do wonder if pace does make the race, and I think that Cambier Park is versatile. She's my top selection in this race, trained by Chad Brown. Now, last time out in the Del Mar Oaks, she got a big pace. You see her swinging widest and fastest. She took advantage of this fast pace. Take a look at the size of this seven-figure purchase. She's just a big, strong, good-looking filly who runs by all these horses in Southern California, but she has shown the ability to stay close to moderate paces in the past and still be successful. I think she's going to be sitting second or third in the early portion of this race behind a moderate pace. Get the jump on horses like Varenka turning into the stretch, and I think Chad might have another good one in Cambier Park. He won this race last year with Rushing Fall. Our friend and colleague David Aragona, always looking for value. Let's see what direction he's headed in this week's edition of the Timeform US Spotlight.
Hi everyone, David Aragona here for this week's Timeform US Spotlight. I'm going to take a look at the 7th race on Saturday at Belmont Park. That's the Floral Park Stakes, going 6 furlongs for the fillies and mares. The likely favorite in this race is the number 6 Goldwood, and we'll begin by taking a look at the Timeform US pace projector because she's predicted to be up towards the front along with the number 7 Mamanu. I'm not going to talk about Mamanu in great detail, although she is a horse who has a chance to win this race. She is a horse who really needs to be on the front end to have her best chance, whereas Goldwood can sit off and stalk a little bit. I think these two will be contesting the pace. It's not a situation that's necessarily going to favor horses on or near the lead, but they are the two quickest horses in the early going, and most of the others do prefer to come from a little bit farther off the pace. Let's head over to Goldwood's PPs and take a look at some of her recent races. Obviously, she's coming into this race off a pretty significant win streak. She's actually won 5 in a row. She won 4 stakes races at Monmouth Park this summer, so she really cleaned up down there. She went to Laurel last time and actually beat a bigger field. She was facing 11 rivals in that Sensible Lady Stakes. She was pretty gritty and game to get the job done as the 6-5 favorite. I will say, though, that race was sort of dominated towards the front end, and she was sort of always in a good spot, whereas some others had that trouble had some trouble in that race. Her speed figures do make her the horse to beat, but it's not like she has some major edge over this field, so I wouldn't be willing to just go too heavily on her as the horse that's most likely to win this race, although she is probably the most likely winner. Moving on to her main rival, number 1, Fire Key. Fire Key was second to Goldwood last time in that Sensible Lady. She was one of the horses that was trying to close at the end from about mid-pack. Fire Key is just really reliable. She always runs well. She's been in good form for the entirety of the year, ever since the trainer switched to Jimmy Ryerson back in April. She likes this Belmont turf course. She handles 6 furlongs, actually, at this distance. She's been in the exacta in 10 of 11 starts during her career. 2 back at Saratoga, just kind of a weird race for Alexandra, came from the back of the pack. 5.5 is really not Fire Key's ideal distance, and I think she's going to run well here. And when you just look at her recent speed figures, they stack up very well against Goldwood, so I don't think that Goldwood has a major edge over this horse. I'm definitely using her, but my top pick is the number 3, Fear No Evil. I've always been a fan of this filly, or mare rather, I should say, now that she's a 5-year-old, and she just has had some trouble in recent starts, often leaves herself with too much to do. What I will say about her, though, is 6 furlongs is the right distance for her. She often runs her best races at Belmont Park. That was certainly the case in this particular race last year, when she was second by 3/4 of a length to Fire Key. Now, Fire Key has had her number on a lot of these races. I think she's beaten her about 4 times over the past year, including in the Sensible Lady last time. But when you watch that Sensible Lady, Fear No Evil is really the horse that took the worst of the trouble. Coming into the far turn, she had to steady back off some horses who were getting shuffled back in front of her. And then at the top of the stretch, as Jorge Vargas was trying to find a clear path for her, he was going inside, found traffic there, tried to go outside, had to alter course a number of times. She was running on at the end, but just was left with way too much to do after getting her momentum stopped at some critical points during that race. What I really love about Fear No Evil today is that she is getting a rider switch to Joao Rosario. Fear No Evil is not always the easiest horse to ride. She needs to be covered up early, needs to make that one run in the stretch, and that's the way that Joao Rosario rides these turf sprints. I think he's a perfect fit for her. I don't believe he's ever ridden her before, and I think she can really take a step forward with him on her back. So I'm hoping she's a little bit of value in this race, because some other horses are likely to take money. If she's in that 6-1 to 8-1 range, I think Fear No Evil is the right horse to bet in the Floral Park on Saturday at Belmont Park. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Nicole Russo's found something at Keeneland for you on Saturday.
A horse I'd be excited to play this weekend is On the Way to Neverland, who gets some class relief in Keeneland's 7th race on Saturday, a turf sprint allowance, after he was last seen in some stakes in March and April. The gelding is by No Nay Never, an outstanding turf sprinter who has gotten off to an outstanding start to his stud career, including some top-level turf sprinters in Europe. So On the Way to Neverland is cutting back to what I think is his preferred sprint distance. The last time he ran in a turf sprint, and on ground rated good no less, he finished second by a neck to Stubbins, who is now bound for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint after winning the Grade 2 Woodford here at Keeneland last weekend. On the Way to Neverland did successfully stretch out to 1.16 miles on synthetic to win the Rushaway at Turfway when he got to stalk a moderate pace. He then was up on a faster pace in the Grade 3 Transylvania at Keeneland, going the same 1.16 miles and wound up 5th. John Velasquez was aboard the gelding for the first time in that race in April, and I like that he retains the mount on Saturday for Wesley Ward, who seems to have spotted this horse well. He might get some ground that he relishes. And again, I'm looking closely at On the Way to Neverland as he cuts back to this turf sprint on Saturday at Keeneland.
Mike Beer, NYRA analyst, let's try to complete the early double at Belmont with your best bet selection.
Yeah, let's see what happens in race number 2, Dan. It's a 40 claimer for 3-year-old fillies on the turf. I want to give Retro Street another chance in here. She's number 2 in this race. A filly who was in really good form earlier this year. They shipped her to Belmont in this very condition back in May. She won by 7 to complete a hat trick, 3 wins in a row for her. Since then, they ran her in some tougher spots. I want to show the replay of her most recent start because I feel like she had an excuse in this race. The pace was not fast in this race, Dan. They took her back. Rajiv Mirage was very conservative with her. He did not try to make her run around the turn. And now you're going to see him through the stretch here, down towards the inside. He's trying to get her off the inside. He'll finally make it right about now. and she's going to come running at the end of this race. She's going to come up short at the end, but I think she ran well in here, and I thought it was a nice turnaround after she had disappointed in one start prior to that. I think if she gets back to her good race, this is a field that she can beat. She's 8-1 on the morning line. I want to give her one more chance.
My best bet is number 2 in race 2, but this one's at Laurel, and that is Bandito, who just had a no-shot trip last time out from a far outside post. We'll take a look at him swinging into the stretch. He was 4 wide every step of the way off of a very moderate pace, and just look at Bandito fight all the way down to the wire. There's just no quit in this horse. He is a very consistent runner when you give him a trip, and this trip never was going to work out, and yet he still finishes a clear second. On Saturday in the second race, he draws a much better inside post position. There is not a lot of speed. I think he can get right up close to the pace and get the jump on the closers turning into the lane. 5-2 on the morning line for Bandito, my best bet at Laurel on Saturday. We thank you for watching Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRF TV's latest offerings on social media. Please follow us on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, please follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.